Fantasy Hockey Picks and Bets presented by PrizePicks here on the Mayo Media Network. I am Matt Moody, here to bring you through Thursday's 10-game NHL slate of action. So as you longtime listeners, been a month now, tend to know, DJ and I tend to do this, DJ Mitchell, we had some technical issues, so it's just me. We figured we'd get it done, get you guys to goods, and get on out of here. So as I alluded to, we do have 10 games. It's a loaded Thursday night of hockey. So I'm just really looking forward to getting into things. So just off the top, make sure if you're watching this on YouTube, leave us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, your favorite bet or your favorite DFS play of the night. And, anything else that you want to do is greatly appreciated, whether you're listening to on a podcast, leaving a 5-star review, anything like that, honestly, or just follow us on Twitter, Mayo Media Net. I'm at Fake Moods, just any sort of engagement. We love to hear from you guys. Tuesday was a pretty good night for us, I would say. A lot of our favorite bets, did hit. DJ's out here posting, 4-leggers, that 12-1 payout. So be sure to follow him. You get some more bets there. But I'm going to bring you through Thursday's 10 games. But before we do that, I do want to talk to you about PrizePicks. So make sure you head on over to prizepicks.com and use promo code MMN, as in Mayo Media Network, when you sign up. Now, what you're doing over there is you are picking up to 5 players. You're picking the over or the under on their assigned fantasy score. And as a refresher, you get 3 points for a goal, 2 points for an assist, and a half point for a shot, a half point for a blocked shot. Now, we do have a couple of plays to get you started here. So the first guy, David Pastrnak, over 5.5 against the Buffalo Sabres. We'll talk about this in just a second, but this game is ripe for Boston to really, just lay the hammer down on the Sabres, who are obviously reeling. Funny enough, Boston has yet to play Buffalo this season. So as bad as, Buffalo has been and as good as Boston has been, they haven't faced off. So I think I'm going to take advantage of this. I think Pastrnak has a monster game here. We're talking, multi-point game. He only needs a couple shots to get you over that hump. And I think he has a multi-goal game in him here. So I really think that, this Boston team will come in, they'll take care of business, and we know exactly who will do the damage. That is David Pastrnak. Now, for a guy a bit lower down the board, 2.9, Clayton Keller. This Arizona-Anaheim game is a battle of 2 pretty poor defensive teams. Certainly last 10 games for both these teams, they're among the worst in the NHL. So I think there will be some pace here, going both ways. And Clayton Keller is playing a premium power play role. He's on the top power play. He's a skilled guy. We absolutely know he's, one of the most talented players on the Arizona roster. And something that we'll cover in a bit more depth. Connor Garland, the guy who takes up most of the shots for this Arizona team, hasn't been on the power play, with Keller. So there's just a little bit more to go around. I think that number is far too low for a guy, with a top 6 role, a top power play role, going against the Anaheim Ducks. So when you're over on PrizePicks, make sure you use those 2 picks to get your entry started. You can pick up to 5. And if you pick 5, you can get up to 10x your entry fee back. So just make sure you head on over to prizepicks.com and use promo code MMN. All right, let's get into Thursday's action here. We will get started with this Pittsburgh at New Jersey game. Now, as of recording, we do not know the status of Pavel Zacha or Evgeny Malkin. So on both sides of this game, we do have some question marks. Currently, Pittsburgh is a -177 road favorite, and New Jersey, you can bet them as a home underdog at +145. To me, this sort of feels like a classic home underdog. Take the value there. I just don't think New Jersey's been playing that poorly, and Pittsburgh hasn't been that impressive. They're coming off of a couple of not necessarily impressive games against Boston. They did win one of them, but they just didn't really generate much. So I'm thinking that the money line here on New Jersey makes, the most sense in my book. And that if you were looking to bet the over or the under, kind of feeling the under. I don't really see where a ton of these goals are coming from. I just don't really see a high tempo, exciting game, especially relative to some of these other games on the 10-game slate here. A couple of player props to keep an eye on. Kasperi Kapanen did get the top power play job without Malkin. Now, of course, he does lose some of his shine, given that Malkin at 5-on-5 helps his 5-on-5 production. But I do think that if you want to take a stab on this Pittsburgh power play, Kapanen at plus 270 to score a goal, not too bad when you consider all of the other guys, Gensel, Crosby, Rust, are plus 190 or lower odds. So plus 270 for this guy. I think that's a perfectly fine bet if you want to take a shot at the Pittsburgh side of things. On the New Jersey side of things, a player that I think will be regularly mentioned when we talk about New Jersey will be Kyle Palmieri. He's basically even money to go over 2.5. So he's been playing a ton of minutes. He's been playing the premium power play role. So I think he's the guy if you're looking for a shot prop from this game. I think he's your guy. Let's get over to Boston at Buffalo. I don't even know what to say about this, guys. Like it's been a tough year in Buffalo, but today was one of the worst days to be a Sabres fan. Ralph Krueger finally fired. I don't really, personally, I didn't really have an issue with the way Krueger seemed as a coach. It seemed like the players absolutely loved him, even when they were losing 10 games in a row. But obviously something had to be done. So perfectly fine with it. I'm just hoping that, they get a respectable coach in there and just sort of, maybe shape things up at 5-on-5 because their power play is still fine. Maybe Jack Eichel isn't dead. We don't know what the issue with him is yet, but just hope that he comes back and is healthy and that maybe next year we get a run. But just appreciate everyone who's, kept us in their thoughts as Sabres fans. Just, a rough time to be a Sabres fan. So anyway, we're looking at Boston here, minus 245 road favorites. Like this is some serious disrespect to the Sabres, and they've absolutely earned it. So, I don't have a problem with pushing the money line there or the puck line. I don't think I'll be doing that myself, though. I think as we alluded to in the prize pick segment, I think I'm really just focusing on the top line for Boston here. So something that I found really interesting was that over on DraftKings, when we look at a guy like Patrice Bergeron, we're talking, a point per game player on the best line in hockey priced at 7,900 on a slate where Connor McDavid, Nate McKinnon, in not quite as good matchups, certainly with McKinnon going against Minnesota, they're at 9K. So we're actually getting a pretty big discount in my estimation on Patrice Bergeron. You can obviously stack them up with Pastrnak and Marchand, but I just really want to centralize my exposure to this game on that top unit and the top power play, which also adds on Nick Ritchie and Matt Grzelcyk. So I think this game's pretty straightforward for me in that I'm pretty interested in the Pastrnak to score a goal at minus 106. Of course, it's always tough to sort of bet on a goal scoring in that way because you never know when a goalie will get hot. Thankfully for the Buffalo Sabres, we don't have to worry about that because I don't think they've had a goalie make a save in a couple months now. So I'm not too worried about that prop. I think that's good value at roughly even money for the Pastrnak goal. A couple other spots in this game. As I mentioned, Nick Ritchie is going to be on that top power play for Boston. We saw some experimenting with David Krejci, but they're back to Ritchie. So plus 240 on Nick Ritchie to pick up a goal on that dynamic power play. I'm absolutely fine with that. I don't really have too much hesitations in placing that bet. On the Sabres side, I just don't think there's anything you want to touch. I don't think there's a ton of value. Guys like Taylor Hall and Sam Reinhart, Rasmus Dahlin, like I would love to see them do well, but I'm just not doing it against this Boston team. We don't really know what the lines will look like in the absence of a Krueger. We don't know if, a guy like Jeff Skinner will get the boost into the top six. Like maybe he should be. There's just a lot of unknown. So maybe keep an eye on Jeff Skinner if he moves up the lineup, but nothing that I really am overly excited about. So we can go from there over into Long Island, where Philly will take on the Islanders after getting absolutely embarrassed in MSG on Wednesday night. The Islanders in this one installed as an early favorite, minus 136. Honestly, I bet that line increases as the day goes on because I think there will be some steam, against anti-Flyer sentiment, let's call it, just given how embarrassing that performance was. As far as this game is concerned, though, I do think there's a pretty valid argument to the over. It's set at 5.5, and I know that these Islanders games are always pretty, touch and go when it comes to, just goal scoring. But they've also, they've flashed the talent, they've flashed the goal scoring ability, and the Flyers certainly have as well. So I'm willing to bet on a bounce back from the Flyers offense. And I think that the Islanders offense sort of speeds up to match that. So I like the over here, and I do like the Islanders side of things. As we alluded to on Tuesday's show, with the return of Pajot after a one-game absence, the Islanders did sort of revamp their power play units. They put them back to basically what you would expect. So that means that a line like Kiefer Bellows replacing Anders Lee with Eberle and Barzal, they're all together at 5-on-5 and on the power play. So that's really useful for DFS purposes. I'm not sure there's a ton of value on the Bellows goal prop, but it is worth noting, especially for you DFS players out there, because that's one of my favorite stacks of the night. On the Flyers side, bizarrely, the Flyers scratched Shane Gostisbehere on Wednesday night. I actually thought he was injured, and then I was reading after the game like, hey, no, that was just a healthy scratch. You need to play better defense. And, what better FU to a coach is it than you get scratched for defense and your team lets up a 9 spot. So I would fully expect Shane Gostisbehere to draw back in here. Not that I think he's the most relevant fantasy piece, but that could alter someone like Ivan Provorov. His power play role has grown over time. So, that's nice to see from a guy like Provorov, who we know is a big minutes guy. And also Eric Gustafsson, but that's not super relevant from a betting perspective. So just thinking about that a bit. On the Flyers side, I think anything around Voracek, Provorov, even Claude Giroux, that's where I want to go with my Flyers exposure. Those guys have really sort of taken over the top power play billing, let's say. And, who knows? They could go scorched earth after Wednesday night, let's be real. So just stay tuned prior to puck drop, to really get a great sense of what they will do. But I do think that Jake Voracek offers a lot of value, both in betting and in, daily fantasy. All right. We can go from there into Columbus at Carolina. Carolina, Dougie Hamilton, if you had him at the over 9.5, he smashed the shot prop there because he had 11 shots on goal last game. Just MVP level stuff, fantasy wise, betting wise from Dougie. And honestly, you might think that Columbus is a better team than Detroit, and you're probably right, but it's actually not that crazy different a matchup. So, if we do see anything similar, Carolina getting down early, we could absolutely see something very similar where, Dougie is just firing from everywhere. That's a lot of what Dougie offers you. He has a lot of shot upside, and he obviously correlates well with the power play pieces there. So thinking about this game from a money lines perspective, I do think it's priced pretty appropriately at Carolina minus 200 favorite. You might be able to talk me into sort of sprinkling in some Columbus money lines. But honestly, if you'd like to do that, I think you just sort of play, Korpisalo or Merge Lincolns in DFS because, like we said, if Carolina's trailing, they're going to fire a ton of pucks on that, and that's how you sort of capture that instant upside daily fantasy game out of your goalie. So I don't think I'll be messing around with the money lines too much because, of course, our favorite player prop from this game, again, just set the recording and let it play. Andrei Svechnikov, over 2.5 shots, minus 148. This guy just does it every game. You don't need me to continue to repeat that. So just don't forget him when you're filling out your card. He's pretty much an instant bet. Every time he's at 2.5, he's one of the best rate shooters in the league. He's playing in a pretty, concentrated offense at this point in time with no Trocheck. So I just don't really think there's too many holes you can point in that player prop. All right. With that game covered, Tampa hosts Chicago for seemingly the seventh time this season. Tampa minus 275 at home. You know, a Patrick Kane game is lurking, and that's something that I am very cognizant of here. So I'm not really sure what I want to do with this, 6 total. I kind of feel like the over is the play. Chicago punches, Tampa punches back, and Tampa keeps punching until there's 7, 8, 9 goals on the board. I can certainly see that happening here. But the one thing I did want to point out is that Patrick Kane, on a slate where we already mentioned McDavid, McKinnon are $9,000 over on DraftKings. Patrick Kane is 7,700. And of course, the matchup is much more difficult. But when something like matchup and ownership are being basically factored in, I don't think there's a better play on this slate than Patrick Kane in tournaments. GPPs with the big money, you need to take some massive stands. And I think Patrick Kane offers a lot of potential for you to do that. And so thinking about this game from how could it play out, you could absolutely see Patrick Kane on the power play. Guys like Carl Soderberg and Adam Boqvist, really pop off here. So I think that's the way I sort of want to treat this game. I don't love any of these Tampa pieces individually. Maybe an Andre Palat shot prop, but even then, Braden Point's been picking it up as of late. So, and I don't know if I want to lay, the money on Braden Point at over 2.5. So I kind of feel most comfortable with, a Patrick Kane related prop, maybe to score a goal, or just focusing on the DFS side of things and, playing cheaper guys like Carl Soderberg and Adam Boqvist, like I mentioned. So you could also talk me into a puck line. I think that, Tampa should take care of business here, but we have seen them struggle in the last couple of games to, finish the deal, losing to Nashville and then, barely eking one out in a shootout against Dallas, their most recent game. So just a few things to think about in that one. All right, half the slate left, 6th game of the night. Nashville at Florida. Florida, another pretty sizable favorite here, minus 220. I'm not sure if anyone told you, at the beginning of the season, hey, Florida is going to be favored over Nashville, basically 2-1. I don't think anyone would have believed you. These teams were projected to be pretty close to start the year, but my gosh, have they gone in completely different directions. So Florida, 19-5-4 on the year. I just think that their team is just playing so well right now. I'm not really sure how you could, make a reasonable argument against playing them, playing their players. So I think what I'll be doing with this one is looking at this over under of 6.5. And I just sure, I know that we've talked about Eeli Tolvanen sort of opening up the Nashville power play. And of course there are good offensive pieces on the Florida side. But this seems like it's priced at 6.5 solely because of the goaltender struggles so far this year. And I just don't really buy that. UC Saros could even be back for this one. And he's been, noticeably better than Rinne for the last couple of years. So we might actually get a decent goaltender battle. And also I should mention Bob has been playing pretty good too. So I think the under on this one's actually a pretty strong bet. I think this is more of a 3-1, 3-2 type finish. And even a 4-2 finish, still gets you nice and comfortable. You backdoor that under. So I think that's my favorite bet here. But if you want to look at player props, I think anything on the Florida side revolves around Alex Barkov. There's really no good way to get exposure to Barkov because he just plays so many minutes and he plays with everybody. He plays on the top line, with now Carter Verhaeghe and Mason Marchment. Duclair was there. He got hurt, and then Marchment came up, and then Vetrano was there, and Marchment again, and then Duclair came back, and he was there, and now he's gone again. So, basically you're talking about this revolving door of wingers around Barkov, and it doesn't end there. On the power play, he's playing with 4 guys who aren't his even strength line mates, with Hornqvist and Huberdeau holding down that second line. And then he kills penalties, and he's out there, with whoever, his penalty kill mate is, the 3rd, 4th liners. So really, if you want to do a player prop in this game, I think you just look at the Barkov over for shots. You could bet on Barkov to score a point, but I don't love the value on that one, honestly. Um, but yeah, I just don't really think that there's a way around this game sort of centering on Barkov and his immense skill set. So I think I'll be focusing on the defensive side of things and betting the under because this is only one of two games that is a 6.5, and I just don't see this one, holding up candle to honestly a few other games on this slate in terms of pace, in terms of tempo, and I will bet on the goalies, just being average, and that's all you need for this under the hit. Sorry, next game we have Dallas on the road in Detroit. Detroit fresh off a big victory versus Carolina, as we already talked about. Most noteworthy in that game was Adam Ernie scoring 2 goals. That Adam Ernie, a guy famous for boarding his future NHL teammate, Jonathan Drouin, and getting suspended for a month in juniors. Like, it was, a big controversy. But he can play too. He's got good hands. He's got some size, and he's playing on a power play unit with Dylan Larkin and Philip Pronik and Philip Zadina. Basically anyone named Philip in the NHL, just pile him in on that power play and Adam Ernie will score. So this one has me pretty intrigued because Detroit comes in at plus 175. And, I've been on here saying, yeah, I think Dallas is a pretty good team. And I do think that, I think they're fine. They're rounding back in the form, with Radulov coming back into the lineup. And, everyone's basically healthy except for Rupe Hintz, who, we don't even know day of the game if he's going to play or not. And that's going to be like that all season. And it's unfortunate for him, but, hopefully when he does play, he can still be productive. So where I'm thinking of that is I do think that this home dog is, as our boys on Friday would say, like, these home dogs do have some bite. Cam Stewart and Chris Meany, they always talk about these home dogs and, he gives you the bark and all that. I'm not going to do the barking, but, just imagine Cam doing that when I talk about this Detroit team, because he did show some life. And I do think, if they have a functional power play, that's been most of their problem this year. They've actually been okay at 5-on-5. It's just been terrible special teams. So I'll ride a little bit of the power play juice, and just think that, maybe they keep this game close, and even 40% of the time they take home a W here at home. So give me the Detroit money line. But otherwise, as far as player props are concerned, I think this Dallas side is very convoluted just right now in terms of how they're being deployed. As I mentioned, they're becoming fully healthy, and there's just not a ton of concentration of their offense. We have guys like Jason Robertson getting top power play time. Radulov with his line mates is on the second power play. So, like, even that first line, you can't really stack all the way up. We'll see if that changes, but it's Dallas. They have 9 guys to be on the top power play, and none of them really separate from the rest, in my estimation. So I'm mostly staying away from them. The one guy who I do think is worth a shot is Joe Pavelski. Over 2.5 shots. You can still get plus money on that. I have no problems if, that's the angle you want to take on this game. But I think I might be focusing more on, a guy like Dylan Larkin, because unlike Dallas, Detroit is just running out their main dudes 24, 25 minutes. That's Dylan Larkin, that's Anthony Mantha. Even Robbie Fabry's gotten, crazy amount of minutes lately. And, that's for the better for us bettors, for us fantasy people. You got to take into account when there's literally a 25% difference in expected ice time. So I do think that Dylan Larkin offers some decent value, but maybe going with a long shot Adam Ernie but a follow-up act, plus 550 to score a goal, playing on the power play with Larkin, with Roenick, just seems like a solid unit with solid talent. You can sprinkle some money on that, plus 550, I think. So let's go to the best game, in my opinion, of the night, Winnipeg at Edmonton. We did get some, slate altering news on Wednesday, which not many people got because Edmonton's beat writers are apparently too busy complaining about analytics to do their jobs. But we did see Leon Draisaitl and McDavid broken up again. So McDavid played all game with Nugent Hopkins and Puljujarvi. Obviously, given their scoreline 7-3, Edmonton had a pretty good game, I would say. So I would imagine that remains the same. Now, of course, this has wild implications as far as DFS is concerned. It changes how you stack with Connor McDavid, but it also impacts, how you bet on this game. So I do think you can absolutely play Leon Draisaitl. I mean, he's still put up a huge game Wednesday. He had 3 assists. He did exactly what you would expect out of Leon Draisaitl. But what I loved about him with McDavid is that he was the ultimate trigger man. He was upwards of 7-8 shot attempts per night. But now that mantle is sort of passed back to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So I think what I'm doing from this one is I'm using both of my center spots on DraftKings with Oilers, McDavid, Nugent-Hopkins, and I will make the rest work. I will figure it out. Puljujarvi is going to be sort of a part of that revolving door on the first power play. So I'm not entirely sure you need to do like every single Edmonton stack with a Puljujarvi, but you should definitely sprinkle him in there because he's just been priced down as if he's not playing with the greatest player in the NHL. And so, that's obviously different here. So I think you should be sprinkling in some Puljujarvi. As far as player props, I mean, I just want to call out this Ryan Nugent-Hopkins plus 210 to score a goal. Kyler Yamamoto is plus 235. And look, I'm not going to sit here and besmirch Kyler Yamamoto because he's a fine player. He's definitely had a good impact on the top 6 in Edmonton since he showed up, but he's not a goal scorer. And Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is leaps and bounds better of a goal scorer than Yamamoto is. And plus 210, given now a new 5-on-5 role with McDavid, a power play job, obviously, I just think he absolutely gets there. I think that's a great value bet at plus 210. But if you want to be a little safer, his shot prop also offers great value at minus 162 here, over 2.5. Like that just seems like a really, really strong bet to me. So my player props here will be focused on the Edmonton side and the Ryan Nugent-Hopkins specifically. However, any game against Edmonton, Winnipeg, I think, is absolutely in play too. They're plus 120. They're even worth a bet, I think. They're coming off a strong win versus Montreal. A road back-to-back, that's a little tough for me to actually go all in on the betting for the Winnipeg side. But in DFS, a game stack is certainly in order. You want to talk Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, Kyle Connor, Nick Ehlers even. Like all these guys are really cheap given the matchup and given just how talented we know they are. So that's just sort of, the way I'm leading on the Winnipeg side is just I want to game stack this one. I think this one will have a ton of tempo, a ton of goals. And I think anyone who's brave enough to just go a full-on game stack will be richly rewarded on Thursday night. So with that said, over 6.5, just go for it, 5-4, let's see it. And it's 2 more games to round out the night. Minnesota at Colorado in maybe the best matchup. If you just want to talk talent on paper of the night, I think that Minnesota Colorado is also going to be a playoff preview, the 2-3 seeds out west. And Colorado in this one is a minus 139 favorite. An awful lot of respect being given to this Minnesota team, which has been very impressive so far this season. So I think I am leaning slightly toward the Minnesota side of things, especially now that we have Kel McCarr seemingly confirmed not to draw back in on Thursday. He might have to wait until Saturday. And Minnesota's just playing so freaking well. They've just been really impressive. Their defensive system is doing exactly what you would expect, which is limit high danger shots and force shots from the outside. So anytime their goalies play, I'm basically, making room for them in my DFS lineups. And this time they're even going to be a bit cheaper, 7,600 for whoever starts. I certainly think that going goalie here is a good way to go about things. As far as player props are concerned, Matt Zuccarello at minus 150 is just one of the more egregious lines that we've been offered. You thought they were beginning to learn because, he was basically even money. And then as him and Kaprizov really gelled, you saw the line rise. Tuesday we talked about it at minus 200, but because they're in a tougher matchup where if they're losing, they might shoot even more, score effects and all that. He goes down to minus 150 to go over 1.5. I just don't know. I just don't really see how that makes sense. I think that's the best value bet in this game, and I think that's the best value bet on the night. Matt Zuccarello's hit that in 9 out of 10 games coming into this one. And again, he and Kaprizov have been really good. They've earned a first-line job in Edmonton, or in Minnesota. I don't know why I said Edmonton, but, Minnesota here, playing them 18, 19 minutes a night, and they're on the top power play together. Kaprizov is a passer. Zuccarello, not a great shooter, but that's why you're getting him at over 1.5 for minus 150. And I just, he's been doing it, and I think he will continue to do it. No problem, no sweat here on Thursday. And on the Colorado side, if you really wanted to, Mikko Rantanen, I think that Chris Meany sort of, writes it in our little, he tells Pat, like, hey, Pat, just make sure you, make sure these guys don't have the show anymore if they don't mention Mikko Rantanen for me. And then he signs a little thank you note, and then he just ships it off. So shout out to Chris there. He would definitely tell you to be slamming this Mikko Rantanen over 2.5. He's just been shooting a lot lately. So, you do love to see that from a guy with the talent that Rantanen has. And I think that line just probably should be 3.5 because he's been hitting a lot of shots every night. So let's get over to the last game of the night here. We have Arizona taking on Anaheim. And, as I alluded to in the prize pick segment, I do think that this game is ripe for a lot of tempo, and tempo means a lot of shots taken, a lot of shots blocked, maybe, which leads me directly to a guy who's been basically driving Arizona's offense, as limited as it may be, in Jakob Chychrun. So Jakob Chychrun here is 6,300 over on DraftKings. He's pretty expensive, so I think that'll keep him, a bit under the radar. But I also do think that, you're talking about a guy who's gone only against Minnesota and Colorado for his last 10 games with one stop in LA along the way there. And even then, he's still at over 4.5 blocks plus shots a night. He's doing everything for this team. He's on the top power play. We know he has multi-goal potential in him. He's one of those defensemen who is involved on the power play. He's really, he's around the net front even sometimes. He's an animal. So I just really, really like Jake Chychrun. I think he could easily hit the shots and the blocks bonus in this one. And hell, I think he could even hit the 3-point bonus too over on DraftKings. So, unfortunately, we don't have a ton of player props surrounding Chychrun. But if you can find them, feel free to pile them away because I do think that this is a really good spot for him. And on the Arizona side, as I mentioned with Clayton Keller, it does seem like Connor Garland has maybe played his way into the doghouse. I honestly can't explain it. I don't know why he didn't get a lick of power play time last game, but that happened. So, any of the guys on the top power play, of course, they're not going to be the best plays because Connor Garland is better than who else they could put out there. But it doesn't really matter when you're going against this Anaheim team. We saw that with Colorado. They are just not that good. They don't really have it unless they have, an A+ goaltending night. They're gonna give up goals. So I really think that this Arizona side is a good bet at minus 127. But I even think the over 5.5 is a really good bet as well. Like, it just doesn't really strike me as a low tempo, low scoring type game. Just given the way these guys have played, both teams have been really allowing it defensively, even when you adjust it for opponents. Both these teams have had pretty rough matchups. There's just a lot of tempo in these games. So, I'm here for the over. On the Anaheim side, not really too much to speak of. It was fun while we had Rickard Rakell at these ridiculously low prices, both betting and DFS. But it seems like they've caught up. I'm not rushing to the counter to jam in any of these Rakell-related player props. So I think I'm mostly staying away from the Anaheim side here. Just will point out that despite getting throttled 9-4 8-4. I don't know. They scored a lot of goals and then gave up even more goals. Adam Henrique and Trevor Zegras were together, and they actually had a positive possession game, which, like, if you watch that game, you would not expect it because, Anaheim spent the entire game in their own zone after the first period. But they were out there. They were the only two guys who were on the team who, could say that. And they're very cheap on DFS sites. So, if you want to get crazy, I think you can stack those two guys up. You might even be able to, place a flyer on Trevor Zegras at plus 425 to score a goal. I know DJ's, been talking my ear off about how Zegras is shooting the puck more. And so how you got to buy in on the World Junior, U.S. hero in Trevor Zegras. So I'm here for it, and I'm here to relay that message as well. That'll do it for the 10 games here. I will just recap with a few of our favorite bets on this slate. Feel free to string these together in a parlay or to just bet them singles. That depends on whatever you want to do for fun. So let's start it off with Andrei Svechnikov. Of course, that's not that exciting. It's pretty boring, actually, because we tell you to do this every damn slate, but it's profitable. And really, what's more fun than making money, So Svechnikov will be the first one. Matt Zuccarello will be the second one. So those are two really good shot props. I think you can bet those in any matchup at these prices. And I think the matchups that they are in are actually pretty good ones for it in any case. And then a bit of a longer odds bet. Patrick Kane multi-point game, plus 290. I believe let's just make sure on that. Oh, plus 190 for Patrick Kane multi-point game. That is some longer odds. I do think that that's absolutely a strong value here. He doesn't smash 50% of the time, sure, but I do think that 30% of the time he erupts, and I don't think that these odds properly account for that. I think they're a bit too they're a bit too depressed because of the matchup with Tampa. So I will be attacking that both in DFS and in the betting streets. And then if you want to talk DFS, I would suggest you head on over to the Morning Skate podcast at Morning Skate Pod on Twitter, where, we cover the slate very in depth. But if you're just looking for, a couple things to get your DFS day started, a couple of my favorite goalies. I mentioned Kaapo Kähkönen, Cam Talbot, whoever starts from Minnesota. I think that price on them, plus the ability for them to literally see 35 shots, even in a loss, just makes them some of the best, combo floor ceiling goalies, whoever starts, obviously. So just keep an eye on that news. And then if you're looking to spend up in net, my favorite spend is Sergei Bobrovsky, 8.2. Maybe Chris Streeter at 8K flat if he does play. But Florida, I just think that this game hits the under, and I'm not that threatened by Nashville. And I think that Florida does give up some easy shots and lets Bob have a nice day for you. Lastly, we'll just mention a couple stacks to help get your offensive side of things started. So as far as upside is concerned, I'm really interested in jamming in this Boston one. As I mentioned with Pastrnak and the prize picks, as I mentioned with Bergeron when we talked about this game, there's just so much upside here. I think that 10 games will really depress ownership across the board. And I think that Bergeron comes in as a slate value, at 7.9K. So I have no problem going with that, two-man stack, adding on Marchand to it too. He's expensive, but upside's absolutely there. And Matt Grzelcyk at 5K as their power play mate, totally fine with it. Maybe this time they won't miss the empty net, with a minute to go, because, just what an awful experience to be live sweating Boston 1, only to see them. Marchand missed over the net from within the blue line. Just like, what an ass. Who does that? Who tries to go bar down on an empty net? But Brad Marchand does. Yeah, probably not that surprising given his status in the league. All right, for the second stack, it's probably not going to be too much of a surprise, but Edmonton 1 is just ridiculously cheap now that they've rekindled their lines. McDavid, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Jesse Puljujärvi. that's just a really crazy cheap stack, given they could even have power play one exposure together. Just way cheaper than you would expect it. If you asked me 2 weeks ago about that stack before they were split up for the first time. And if you really want a pure punt to go with that, Ethan Bear, 2.5, should draw in on defense and is the classic guy who you just play and hope he hits the blocks bonus on DraftKings, or hope, he passes McDavid the puck and McDavid does McDavid things and scores. So I really do like that one, that stack. And obviously Tyson Barrie, since he will be playing on Thursday, makes sense as well, coming off of a 4-assist night. So that will do it for these 10 games. Obviously would love to hear your feedback via the YouTube comments, via tweets. I am at Fake Moods. And be sure to stay tuned to the Mayo Media Twitter for more content, more information, and so on. So last thing, big thanks to Prize Picks. Make sure you head on over to prizepicks.com and use promo code MMN when you sign up for a match deposit bonus. And best of luck on this Thursday. So thank you for listening. I am Matt. We'll talk to you later.